All right.
All right.
Please state your name.
My name is David Etto.
Nice to meet you, David. And what are we doing here today?
We're going to essentially reminisce about my life and what I feel are important aspects of my life that I think that my grandchildren and my son would be interested to know. That my life is different from a lot of people's lives. So everybody's life, I suppose, is different, but I have certain part of my life that are impacted by some of the history of our country, and I'd like to talk about those things.
And what do you think about something like all this?
It's an opportunity for me to talk about things in a professional atmosphere, and that's about it, I guess.
All right, well, let's start from the top.
Okay.
When and where were you born?
I was born on September 26, 1931. That was 2 years after the stock market crash in 1929, which pretty much got the Big Depression going in 1929, and caused a lot of heartbreak for the people of the U.S. and across the world as well, because of the interaction between economies of the country, just like it is now. As a matter of fact, even in Europe, Eastern Europe, we are feeling some impact of the war there.
Mm-hmm. And who were your parents?
My my parents were Mamoru and Kura Eto. My father was, I can't remember, he was born in 1883. My father was born in 1883. I don't know when, and my mother was born about 10 years later in Japan. My father was born in Oita-ken in Kyushu Island in Japan, and my mother was also born on Kyushu, but I don't know what city.
And what were they like?
What were they like?
When you were born, what were they doing?
What were they doing? Well, when I was born, my mother was the mother of 9 children, and my father was a gardener in Los Angeles. His previous history was that he lived in Japan until his 30s. He taught at a university, the physical education at a university, which is now, I have to think about it a little bit, the name of the school, but it's currently the 5th largest university in Japan. But he was on the faculty there, and my mother was a housewife with one child in Japan. And the reason he came to America was to further his education. And when he came over, he had just one child. That was my oldest sister, Hitoko, or we call her Helen. And they came over with just one child, and they came into San Francisco, and he was supposed to go to a college in Massachusetts, but that he saw the way I understand it, he saw the plight of the Japanese people here in the U.S., and he decided to stay and minister to them. He had been converted to Christianity at this university, which was founded by Methodist missionaries. So he became a Methodist minister and opened a church somewhere up north, northern California. And he, of course, he had to feed his family, so he had a 2-acre plot of land in a town called I don't remember the name of the town, but it was in a valley in the Sacramento area. The name of the town will eventually come up to me.
That's okay.
But he worked there, ministering to the people and working as a truck farmer on 2 acres of land, and then he gave birth to my brother Ken, my brother Daniel, my brother Joseph, my sister Mitzi, my sister Mary, my sister Esther, and my brother Moses.
Oh my goodness.
I'll think of the name of the town one of these days. And then for some reason I don't know, probably to increase the people that he ministered to, he moved to Los Angeles, and that's where I was born, in Los Angeles in 1931. You'll recall that that was the period when the stock market crashed, and we went into a deep depression, and my father was the father of 9 kids, including me. And he fed us on his gardener's wages. And as many families did during that period, my oldest brother, Ken, he left the family at age 12 to go out on his own. And I found out this from my history teacher that I took a class in not long ago, that was a common thing during those times. But he was too young. The police caught him in San Diego and brought him back home. He stayed with the family for 2 more years, and at the age of 14, he left again. And we never saw him again until he was married and had 2 kids. And that was after the Second World War. So I never knew my oldest brother until he was a grown man. Anyhow,
How much older is your older brother, this brother, than you?
he's probably 14 years older than me.
Okay.
Could be 15 years older than me, because I have his birth date somewhere, but I guess it is because of I know the brother who I know is 10 years older than me. I mean, they're all dead now, but he was 10 years older than me, and Ken was like 4 years older than Joe, my brother Joe. And
So your eldest brother, when he left the house, you were a baby.
I was a baby, yes. Yeah.
I understand.
So I didn't know him.
Mm-hmm.
I heard about him through my older brothers and sisters that he existed.
Mm-hmm. And what was it like growing up with 8 siblings?
8 siblings. It was mostly, I was really young. We were very poor, but when you're that age, you really don't know it, because everybody around us was poor too. So it didn't feel like a hardship. I only realized it was a hardship after I grew up, and I lived a relatively normal life. Especially after went to college and got an education and things like that. But anyhow, so
What was young David like?
young David was smart. He fought with his brother, Mo, who was 2 years older than him. He fought with him a lot, and Mo made me cry almost every day going to school. We moved from Los Angeles to Pasadena. I don't know the reason, but I guess the reason is because my father wanted a larger preaching practice, so he was able to move into a house that had a very large living room. He converted the living room into a sanctuary, and he held church there and Sunday school. And so all my friends came over on Sunday and attended Sunday school practice. But the reason they really came was because after Sunday school, my father took us in his pickup truck. We went to the grocery store down the street, and he bought candy. And the kind of candy that I remember was sugar dots, colored sugar dots, pasted on strips of paper, and he would give me 10 or 15 cents, and I would go into the grocery store and pick up these paper dots of sugar dots and tear them off and give them to the kids. And that's the reason they went to Sunday school. That's the reason I went to Sunday school. Anyhow, we lived in Pasadena. We lived at 46 West Delmar Street in Pasadena. I remember that. After the Second World War, I came back, after many years, came back to California to live, and went back to the neighborhood where I grew up, and the house was no longer there. And I got really angry. And that's the first time I got angry that we were evacuated from California and put into camps. Before that, and I'll explain why later, I thought nothing of it. And I was angry because we had a ping pong table that actually was our dinner table that fed 9 people. It's a big oak table, and I wondered where it was. Then I recalled that we had been forcefully removed from California. It's the first and only time I really got angry at our country for doing that to the Japanese Americans. But before that, I remember December 7th, 1941, when Japan attacked Pearl Harbor. And our family had to hide in our house, turn all lights out. Everybody turned lights out because it was a blackout. But it was only then that I realized that I was Japanese and that we were looked down upon. But I didn't get mad at the U.S. I got mad at Japan because I thought it was because of the Japanese attack on Pearl Harbor that there was this feeling, which was certainly was true, but I don't know what other Japanese people my age felt. Although when we got put into the camps, we did have arguments among my friends about whose fault it was, you know. The fact that we were American citizens and put into these camps and the U.S. Constitution was ignored, or because it was Japan that came and bombed Pearl Harbor. Well, we had both sides of that argument going. I was on the side of the U.S., and a lot of people were. But I think I'm getting ahead of myself.
So when Pearl Harbor happens, you were 10 years old.
I was 10 years old, yes.
And how many years until the internment camps?
Oh, about 4 months.
Okay, so only 4 months later.
Yeah, well, it was December 7, 1941, and about March is when we got rounded up. We had to get rid of everything. We lost everything. Cars, and the big ping pong table. We lost that. And we could carry just what we had in our arms. Well, all the kids carried something, and the parents carried something, and my family got split up at that time. All the older brothers and sisters, they essentially became bachelors and bachelorettes, and they went their own way. So all I had was my father. My mother, by the way, was sent to Japan by my father in, I think it was about 1934.
I see. So before internment, your mother was in
Before
Japan.
internment, before the war, but during the Depression, I think he sent my mother and my youngest sister to Japan to ease the situation at home. That wasn't much better for them in Japan, but that wasn't his problem.
And they had some family there that could help them?
Yeah, her family, my mother's family, yeah. And so they were sent to Japan. I remember the day when they were sent to Japan, because it was we went to where they sent the ships out. That was something that was absolutely novel to me. I'd never seen a ship before. One of the things that they did when people left on the ships, that they had these rolls of paper, colored paper, streams of paper that would throw off the ship. And what I remember vividly is me scurrying around maybe 3 or 4 years old, and scurrying around picking up these rolls of paper and stuffing them in my pocket. That's one of the things that I remembered very well. Anyhow,
Will your mother return?
no, she died in Japan during the war. However, my younger sister was, my oldest sister went back to Japan when I was probably 5. And she went back to Japan and picked up my younger sister and brought her back to the States. And one of the things I remember about it is that my younger sister, all she could do is speak Japanese. And I didn't speak Japanese. It was sort of strange. You know, but she soon learned English and she forgot all of her Japanese. But what I remember about that situation was that here was my little sister speaking Japanese, and I didn't. For some reason, that stuck with me.
And so you're 4 or 5, and your mother is leaving on this ship, and this is the last time you'll see your mother?
Yeah, it was the last time I saw my mother, yeah.
What do you remember about your mother and the way she was?
I remember nothing. I don't remember anything about my mother. I don't remember what she looked like, except for pictures, but I don't have a memory of her, and I don't have a memory of her voice. My older brother, Joe, who's 10 years older than me, he even says, I don't remember what Mom's voice sounded like. So it must have been a traumatic situation, I gather. I didn't ask any of my other brothers and sisters whether they remembered her or not, but what I remembered was my brother Joe, who's 10 years older than me, said he doesn't remember her voice. So anyhow, she was gone from our life. And when the war came, there was my brother Ken, I think I told you that he left home. He was gone until after the Second World War. And so when the war came, there was just Helen, Dan, Joe, Mitz, and the rest of us kids. So Ken was gone. And we went into the camps in March 1942. We went up to I can't remember the name of the town anymore. But anyhow, it was called an assembly center. It was they had a racetrack there. The Tulare racetrack. It was in Tulare, California. And they put us up in the horse stalls there. And it was a very hasty decision to send us up there. So all they could do is find places that they could put 120,000 Japanese and Japanese Americans up. And racetracks were simple enough. So there's the Santa Anita racetrack in LA, Tulare racetrack in Tulare were used. They put us up in the horse stalls. They gave us big bags to stuff hay in for mattresses. And they put us up in the horse stalls. And it was a very tense time for us. And I remember, because it was tense, I had constipation. And it was horrible, horrible constipation. And there were no hospitals. And so the sister, the oldest sister who was there with us was 16 years old, and she took care of me through this horrible time. My sister Mitzi went to Oklahoma to go to school. My sister Helen went to Salt Lake City to be on her own since she worked as a caretaker for a family, took care of the kids. And my brother Joe was 10 years older than me, so he was 20. He went off as a bachelor. So there was my father, my brother Daniel, and my sister Mary, and the rest of us. I guess there was Mary, Esther, Lou, me, Ruthie, 4, 5, about 6 of us. And so we never got together again as a family after that. We've seen each other, but we were never together as a family.
And so to be clear, military or police had come to your home and took you to the racetrack?
No, as a matter of fact, it was very civil. They told us to, you can take one bag apiece, what you can carry, and go to the train station on the corner of Fair Oaks and Del Mar, Fair Oaks, Del Mar, and Pasadena. And there was a train station used to go through there where they went from Pasadena to LA. And so we went there.
And who told you this?
Oh, I don't remember. I was too young.
Oh, you're 10 years old.
I was 10 years old. Someone told us where
Someone
to go.
told, okay.
Yeah, and I've seen pictures, photographs since then of people in different cities in the country, in California, going to the different train stations up all the way through Washington, and all carrying bags and getting on the trains. And then they made us pull the shades down so that no one could see us, and they sent us up to the racetrack, to Tulare.
Okay.
And we got there and carried our bags. Someone told us where to go, and we had to fill these sacks up with straw and had these steel beds to sleep on.
And how long would you be at this racetrack?
We were there for 4 months. And then during those 4 months, they built these huge camps in remote parts of the country. The camp that we went to was in southern Arizona in the desert. And when we arrived there, I don't remember what month it was. When we arrived there, it was the middle of a dust storm. A dust storm in Arizona in the middle of the desert is something. It's a wall of brown that comes toward you. When you see it, it's frightening as all hell. And you run into the barracks, but it didn't do any good because the barracks were put up hastily with big cracks in it, and then you had dust everywhere. But anyhow, so that's how we arrived there, in the middle of the desert. So we stayed there from about the summer of 42 till the fall of 44.
2 years.
Yeah, 2.5 years. 2.5 years. I was 10 to 12 and a half years old. It was just fun. I mean, just fun for us. Especially since I had a lot of friends out there now. Japanese guys my age. And there were hills and things. It wasn't like Pasadena. There were hills up there, and we could climb up those hills and roll big boulders down the hills and hear them echoing. And so, and not only that, but we had sagebrush. We were right in the middle of the desert, so we had sagebrush. And and in the middle of the winter, we would all stand around a sagebrush, light up one sagebrush, let it burn, and get warm, then go to the next sagebrush. By the springtime, we had a whole baseball field full area in order to build a baseball diamond out there, and so doing that and climbing up and down these what we call buttes. There were two camps nearby. I mean, one was called the Canal Camp because they had canals running by it for the Indians that lived there. And we were called the Butte Camp because we had a butte. And we would climb up and down the butte and play and stuff like that.
And so are these camps fenced in? Are you in fences?
Yes,
or?
they're fenced in with guards
Okay.
and searchlights and machine guns.
And how large is this area?
I don't know, huge.
Couple football fields?
Oh, more,
Much larger?
No, much bigger than that.
A mile?
Yeah, could be. Yeah,
Okay.
Yeah, they were quite big. And they were broken up into blocks. And I lived in block 46, barracks 11, unit D, 46. So I lived in 4611D. Well, it's funny because in Pasadena, I lived on 46 West Delmar Street. And then next time I moved it was to Seabrook, New Jersey. And I'll tell you the reason why. And I lived on 46 MacArthur Drive. Sort of.
It's quite the coincidence.
Quite the coincidence. So anyhow,
So we're in these camps, and is the quality of life much better than at the racetrack? Because the racetrack it was very uncomfortable.
oh no, these were just as uncomfortable. First of all, it was in the desert, and we had windstorms and stuff like that, and they were very poorly built, and it was very, very hot in the summertime. We had air coolers, water coolers in each room. There were 4 rooms with one family each room. So we had one room with a family and same kind of beds. But we had a mess room. We had a shower for men, a shower for women, and a laundry room, and a mess hall for meals. And so we got fed. We could stay clean. And I was 12 years old, and so it was sort of fun, you know.
How was the food?
The food, I don't remember the food. It must not have been very memorable.
So you're 10 to 12, and it sounds like you have some fun. You have a lot of friends you've made. And,
yeah, as a matter of fact, later on when we moved out of the camps, it was toward the end of the war, they needed more workers in the factories to supply food for the soldiers. So we got sent to New Jersey to work in a food processing plant. And my father, he saw the opportunity to start up a church again. So we went out to New Jersey where there was a bunch of, I don't remember how many Japanese people. We went and they had built some more barrack-like structures, and so we lived there until I left there in 1951.
So you're in the Arizona camp, and
Yes.
then you mentioned you're going to leave to New Jersey.
Yes, right. They decided that we were not a hazard, or I don't know what the word is. So, they let us go out of the camps, and so they needed people to provide food for the soldiers. And so, and there was this food processing plant in Seabrook, New Jersey. So my father said, that's where we'll go.
So the military doesn't think you and your family are a threat anymore, and so they're going to let you leave the camps. And you were mentioning that they needed people in factories to produce
Yes,
food?
in factories to provide food for the troops. So my father agreed to go to the camps, and my sister Helen, apparently because my younger sisters didn't go with me, they went to Salt Lake City. My sister Ruthie and Esther and Mary went to Salt Lake City to live with my sister Helen. And just the three of us, Mo and me and Pop, went to New Jersey. And that was good because it was pretty crude. They built these dwellings for us, but they were pretty crude. The stoves that we could cook in were coal stoves, so we had to light a fire, and the heat that we got was from a heater, and the water that we got was from the heater heating water. So and so we had coal delivered to the house in a big bin in front of each dwelling. And we had to start a fire with wood and burn the coal. And that's how we cooked our meals after we got out of the camps. But, it apparently didn't bother us. It didn't bother me, even though it was, I had to cook the meals. I was 12 years old. And I and my brother had to cook while my father worked. And so the kind of meals we cooked were pretty simple, like hamburger and pieces of ham and rice. And So very, very simple. But anyhow,
And he's working in the factory?
he was working in the factory, yes. And then he started services on a Sunday. So we lived like that for a couple of years until my younger sister moved from Salt Lake City and joined us. And later on, my sister Esther did the same thing. And eventually, at one time or another, my older brothers and sisters came one at a time and stayed with us for brief periods of time while they were doing other things. And so these people that I ran around with in New Jersey in 1944 and 45, all the way up to 1949, I still keep in contact with. I can get a hold of some of them by phone, 8th grade classmates, which is really nice. And one of the reasons is we all lived, our pattern of life was pretty much the same. Lived in Southern California, put into the assembly centers, into camps somewhere around the country, came together and went to work in the food processing plants in New Jersey and went to high school. So we had a common history, which was, I suppose, was, I don't know what it did for us, but it made us feel close. And so I still enjoy the friendships. And we're all 90 years old. A lot of us have died, but it's nice to have friends that I've known that long. And I don't think very many people have that kind of experience.
And so in New Jersey, are you going to school during the day?
Yes, so we're going to, first of all, we went to 8th grade together, was just walk to the school, and then went to Bridgeton High School for 4 years. And that's when I found out that I was pretty good in physics and maybe not so good in chemistry.
And when you were in the camps, like in Arizona, were you going to school during that time?
Yes, there were Japanese people who could teach. In fact, I had a couple brothers who taught. And so I went through 5th and or 6th and 7th grade, I think it was, I'm not sure, in camp. And then I went to 8th grade in high school in New Jersey. And that's where I found out that I had some sort of skills in the technical area. And then after I graduated from high school, I was out of sorts. I didn't know what to do. No money. But then the Second World War was just about over, but you could still join the Army, and they would give you a GI Bill. And while I was in the Army, the Korean War started. And lucky for me, we were in basic training, and every other basic training class went to Korea, and the other one went to Germany. And so we had to go to Germany and take care of all the German girls, which was that rough work. And so while I studied German and sociology and some other University of Maryland off-campus courses in Munich. And And that helped me a lot because I was able to use that coursework to lighten my load when I went when I left the Army in 1954, March 54, and I immediately went to New York, and I joined the Army from there. Went to school from there. I worked in different factories and things like that while I was waiting for school to start.
Do you remember what products you were making in the factories?
Yes, as a matter of fact, made Japanese rice crackers and those little crackers that had fortune cookies.
Yeah, fortune cookies?
Fortune cookies. So I made fortune cookies.
And were you an assembly line worker?
And it was a very small fortune cookie factory on Long Island. And there were just like 3 employees. I was one of them. And I made fortune cookies. And I still remember doing this and putting the fortunes in them, folding them. Then they went down a trough and dropped into a can.
And so you're out of the military, right, at this point?
I had been in the military by that point. By 51 to 54, no. Yeah, 51 to 54, I was in the Army in Germany. I was in the artillery. And in the artillery, I was in fire direction control. And I had a platoon. Became a sergeant. And I had a platoon of soldiers that did the surveying work and the fire direction work. And I was in charge of that operation. So I fired artillery shells in Germany. It was, it was peacetime, but I was able to try out my skills at finding out where our artillery battery was located and where we wanted to hit our targets, and having a team of people to do all of that with me. And so I was called the fire direction and control chief. And the first time I did that, and registered our battery, and then after we registered the battery, we had to move over and hit a target that was within the area. And the target we had to hit was a barrel, 50-gallon barrel. And the first time we did it, we hit the barrel right on the head, 11 miles away. That was fun.
And so you leave the Army in 54.
I leave the Army in 54.
You're 23 years old.
Yeah.
You're 23 or 24.
23 years old. I go to New York City because my sister had an apartment there. My father was still living in New Jersey, but I didn't want to go there. And I had no place else to go, so I went to New York City, and my sister had an apartment, rented an apartment on the Lower West Side. And so I stayed there for the summer, and I worked for this fortune cookie factory. And then in the fall, I went off to Case Institute of Technology and studied physics.
And is your father, at this time, is he still in New Jersey?
He's still in New Jersey. he lived there by himself until he was 98 years old. And then he got sick, so some of my sisters went over to New Jersey and tended to him. And then so I had some sisters living in LA, so they took him to LA and they put him in a Japanese retirement home. And he was living the life of ease.
Okay, so you begin to study physics where?
I studied at Case Institute of Technology in Cleveland. And then in the summers, I would work for my brothers in Chicago. One of them had what do you call it? He made catalogs from scratch. He made the original artwork and stuff like that, and then they would send it out and get it mass produced. But he did all of the original artwork and everything like that. And I worked for him, working on the cameras and stuff like that. And then another summer, I worked for my other brother, the one that we had lost track of. He ended up in Chicago as well as my brother. My brother, he was on the staff of a Japanese American newspaper, and he had his name on the, whatever you call that. And my other brother saw his name, so he called him up and he asked him who he was and says, when he says, so this is your brother Ken. And my brother Joe, his jaws dropped. We hadn't seen him in decades. It turns out that when he left, when Ken, my oldest brother, left, he became a card shark. He became very good at playing cards and fleecing people. And he would, there was a lot of people going up to Alaska to work in the canning factories up there. And so he would ride on the trains and start card games. I don't know how long he did that for, but then he went to Chicago and he got in touch with the Chicago Mafia and started to work for them. And he rose up in the ranks in the Chicago Mafia. So he started owning nightclubs and stuff like that, and restaurants in Chicago. And I worked in one of his little restaurants, a little 6 or 7 stool restaurant. And he let me work there for one summer. So I worked there for the summer. And then when it was time for me to go back to school, he says, take everything cash out of the register, put it in your pocket, and you can go. It wasn't much of a business for him. I mean, it turned out to be that he had this little 6-stool restaurant was a front for a gambling hall that he had in the back. And that's where the money was. He also ran numbers in the Chicago area. And I also, on one trip, I went with one of his guys to Gary, Indiana, and collected the money. Brought the money back, and he had it in a big bag like this, and then he put it into a coin sorter and sorted all the money out. So I saw the whole operation. Plus, he had gambling halls. And I remember going to one of his gambling halls, and they're all Asian guys, and they're all playing cards. And one guy's on a ladder, and he's sitting on top of the ladder with a pistol in his pocket like this, looking at it. Which which was a strange thing. But it's those little tidbits that I remember. Another one thing that I remembered was for some reason he had this jewelry box, and this jewelry box was full of what he called emeralds and very expensive jewelry. And I didn't know what it was for, but that memory of seeing that box full of fancy stuff was sort of impressive. You don't forget those things.
Box of treasure.
Yes.
And so in the summers, you worked for your brother's company?
Yeah, I
All the
worked for
while.
my brother's, two brothers' company, and by the one summer I worked in a restaurant on Long Island, and then the other 2 summers I worked for my brothers. Then after that, I got a job for the Navy, and then I worked for the Navy for about like 6 or 8 years, and they sent me to MIT, all expenses paid, with my salary. By that time I was married, but didn't have any kids yet. So my wife and I went up to Boston, Cambridge. She went to school in Boston, and I went to MIT and studied aeronautics and astronautics. And that's where I met all these astronauts, guys that I knew personally. One guy died in space. One guy went to the moon. And one guy just went around the Earth. He got airsick. He was a jet pilot, but he got airsick in one of these things. And so he didn't make it all the way through astronaut school.
And so wait, you joined the Navy at 28? You were in school for 4 years for physics?
And I was in the Army from 21 to 24. And then I went to college from 24 to 28. I graduated when I was 27, 28. And got a job with the Navy. And I worked for them for a number of years, working on satellites and missiles, designing missile systems, testing systems, taking missile parts out to sea on aircraft carriers, and going above the what do you call it? Not the North Pole. Antarctic, and into the Arctic Circle, and tested equipment up there to see how it operated in where the gravity vector was a lot different from where the horizontal was. And so then we brought the ship back down, took the ship out to the Mediterranean, and tested equipment there too. And by that time, I had met his grandmother.
At what age?
What age was I? Got married in 1960, so I was 29, so I was 28 years old when I met her. She was working as a librarian's assistant in Indianapolis libraries. And I was working as an engineer. And when we got married, and then they said they'd pay all of our expenses if I would go to MIT for 3 years and for 1 year and promise to work for the Navy for 3 more years. So I talked to her and she said, okay. So we did that. We got all expenses paid, travel, everything, salary. So she was able to go to school too. And so we finished in 54, came back, and we worked 3 years and came to California.
So for 3 years after MIT, you work for the Navy, and your wife at the time does what?
She started to work for the library system again, but then she got pregnant with my older son, and that was in 1965. And so she quit, and then we came out to California in '66 after my 3-year tour with the Navy was over, and we came out here.
And her name was?
Grace. Yeah.
So you have one child, you're finishing your 3 years with the Navy,
Yep.
and you, Grace,
And Alan
and Alan moved to California.
moved to California. Yeah.
And what's in California for you?
Well, as a matter of fact, Hughes Aircraft Company, I had been doing some work for the Navy, and I had to do work, interface with the Navy. I mean, with Hughes Aircraft, because they were doing stuff for us. And they gave me a huge salary offer to come to California. And so after my 3 years was up, we moved out here and moved to Santa Monica, where his dad was born.
Who is sitting to my right?
Oh, you my grandson, Gordon. Tad, I mean, God damn it. Brody. Brody. You'll have to edit all that out.
Yeah. So you, your new wife Grace, and son Alan
Yes,
moved to California.
yeah. The reason we moved to California was that Hughes Aircraft Company offered me a 50% raise in my salary. Couldn't turn that down. Plus, all expenses paid to come to California. So we took the slow route to California. And we moved into Santa Monica, into an apartment there. And lived there for, I don't remember how long. We bought a house in West LA. Stayed there for probably 2-3 years. And bought a house in San Fernando Valley.
Did you move to the San Fernando Valley, or you bought another house?
We bought another house and moved there. That was after his dad was born. God.
You bought another house in San Fernando.
We bought another house in San Fernando Valley and moved there in 1972, I believe.
And did you sell the house in LA?
Yes, we sold a house in LA.
Okay. And at this point, you're working for?
I'm still working for Hughes Aircraft. company. In fact, I worked for Hughes Aircraft Company until I retired from there.
And so you're 40, you're in 40 something.
Yeah, let's see. If I was 40, well, what is that? Would have been 1971. I think I moved it. I think I moved to San Fernando Valley in 1972, so I was 40 years old.
And you have another child here? Or
No, oh yeah, I had Tad when in 1967. So that was, oh yeah, that was before I moved out of Santa Monica, because I remember that my older son, Alan, I remember once he grabbed Tad and pulled him off the bed onto the floor. Yeah. So we moved to San Fernando Valley in 1972. I knew, and I worked for another division, a missile division. And I spent several years designing missiles and testing them all over the country. New Mexico, Florida.
and what type of missiles?
Mostly air-to-surface missiles. My specialty was the sensors that locked onto the target and guided the missiles to the target. So I did a lot of testing, flight testing in Florida and in New Mexico, hitting tanks and things like that, and also in the Gulf of Mexico at ships that were old ships that were just there for us to hit. So I did a lot of that.
And were all the missiles you worked on, are these just conventional explosives or anything nuclear?
I worked on one missile guidance system that was designed to be nuclear, but we never finished building it. It was designed to fit into an aircraft called an A3J, which doesn't exist.
And so how long do you work? This is all for the Hughes.
This is all for Hughes Aircraft Company. I started to work for Hughes in 1966, and I retired from Hughes in 1992. So I worked a long time. In fact, other than the Navy, that was the only people I worked for.
So you retire in 92,
Yeah,
age 61,
age 61, yeah.
and you have two children, Ted and Alan?
Yeah, Alan and Tad, right? Uh-huh. And my first wife got cancer in 1985 or 86, and she had it for quite a few years, but then she succumbed to it in 1990. And I married Diane in late 1991.
Did you marry Diane before or after retiring from Hughes?
It was almost the same time. I remember we married, I retired, we bought this house, and I didn't have anything to do. She was still working at the Hughes Research Labs in Malibu. And I just played. And she sort of got upset about that, so she says, I'm quitting too. So she quit. And by that time, I had started a business analyzing automobile accidents. Yeah, that's what I did. I analyzed automobile accidents for law firms. And then I testified at trials as an expert witness. And essentially, my job was to teach the jury what actually happened and give them the specific details of the severity of the impact and how fast the cars were going. And I didn't tell them who was at fault, but they were supposed to draw their own conclusions. And my job was to describe the whole situation for them, and it was their job to decide who was at fault. So that's what I did for 10 years.
And this was a company of your own creation?
Yeah,
What was it called?
Eddo and Associates. And there were no other associates.
And did you enjoy doing that?
Yes, I did. I enjoyed doing it, but then there was a lot of phony accidents going on where people wanted to sue somebody, and so they created accidents, bumping into each other and all that kind of stuff. And after a while, the accidents became too similar, and I got tired of it, so I said I quit. So I quit.
And that is in 2002.
Yeah, pretty much. And then I've been playing ever since.
What do you play?
I played golf, mainly golf, and I did a lot of fishing, ocean fishing, tuna, some mackerel, yellowfin tuna, lots of San Diego type fish, and off of Mexico. Go to 3 and 5 day trips. We always had a freezer full of frozen fish.
Have you traveled much for golf? Have you gone to many courses?
No, just around here. But my wife and I, we traveled all over the world. Lots, mostly in Europe, because she likes Europe. Went to South America, Asia. But then as we got older, we slowed down our traveling.
Do you still golf?
Nope. I gave up golf. In fact, I gave away my clubs, which was a humongous, significant thing to give up golf clubs. I played tennis for a long time because she belonged to a tennis club, and I joined. And
Tell me about some of your travels together.
well, one of the things is that I did was my first wife and I. My first wife She spent a few years in South America, where her parents took her while he was doing some work for the United Nations. And she spent some time in Uruguay and became very fluent in Spanish. That was one thing that I was really impressed with. She was a really intelligent woman. And she picked up Spanish very easily. And we had house help people come in to clean the place, and she would speak to them in Spanish, really fluent Spanish, and I could tell that she knew what she was doing. So, but then she died of cancer, and a couple of years later, I married Diane.
So you guys like to go to Diane Likes Europe?
Yes, she likes Europe. We've gone there. We spent a month there once, just traveling around Holland and France, Italy, a little bit of Switzerland. But as we get older, the trips get farther and farther in between. But I'm trying to see if we can go to Italy in August, because one of my nephews is getting married, and he's getting married there, and it sounded like it might be fun. And I would run into some relatives that I have never met yet. These would be kids of my oldest brother, and they all live in Minnesota. And I've never met them, some of them. He's the one who, my oldest brother's the one who, I told you, he worked for the mafia. They thought he was gonna rat on them, so they had a couple guys take him in a car, and they shot him in the head twice, and they didn't kill him. He pretended that he was dead. And somehow I got them to the police. I don't know exactly how. Or either that or they got caught or something. But anyhow, they ended up in somebody's trunk. And he got away. But he had to be in the witness protection program. And in the course of like 10 years, he sort of decimated the Chicago Mafia. And after all that time, then he became safe, and he was able to live out a normal life.
Are any of your siblings alive?
And my siblings, yeah, I had 8 siblings. There are 3 of us left. I have a 95-year-old sister, a 96-year-old sister, and an 88-year-old sister, and me.
In terms of a timeline and the major parts of your life, do you feel that we're up to speed now?
Yeah, the major parts of my life, I would say, yeah, pretty much.
Where are your children now?
I only have one son. My older son, Alan, he graduated from Juilliard, and he was a professional dancer. He was gay, and he became ill with something associated with that, and he died in 1994. No, wait a minute. Oh, why is it so confusing? My first wife died in 1990. My son died in 19. '94, I guess. Can't remember. Jeez, I've known it. That's about it. I've got Tad. That's it.
And where is Ted now?
Tad is in Detroit, Michigan. He's building houses, rebuilding houses, I think, taking older houses and refurbishing them and selling them. I have seen some of his work. It's pretty good. I'm hoping that he's on his last one, that he's going to come home sometime this year. I hope.
What was Ted like as a child?
Tad, it was sort of wild. He was a pretty good athlete, but then he got involved with drugs while he was in high school, and it became a very heavy thing for him for the next, I don't know, maybe 20 years or so, maybe longer, until he figured out that, I don't know exactly how it happened, but he figured out that he needed to stop. So from what I understand, he stopped on his own, and he said that the last time he got arrested, he felt relieved because he said somehow he knew it was going to be the last time, and apparently that's what happened, and he's been clean ever since, for many years now, and before he got married early on, and they had Brody, yeah, and he was still using drugs, so his wife left him, which we agreed was a good thing. And then he was on his own. We don't know what he was doing. Didn't ask. He didn't tell. But then somehow he got clean. I don't know how he did it. And started working in the movie industry. And met his second wife. And it looks like they have parted ways. And there's some hints that he has another woman in his life. I don't know. I'm hoping that we'll find out this year sometime. But we're hoping that he will move back to the LA area and pick up some sort of business over here. He's a very, very smart guy. He can do a lot of things. And so I'm not worried about that. It sort of brings us up to date. I haven't been doing anything interesting in my life. I haven't added any skills, although I'm interested in a whole bunch of stuff.
So looking back, what was it like, your relationship with your father when you were young?
I'm looking for the word. Having something to do with being sick. I think he was mentally ill. It seems to be the consensus among all of my brothers and sisters, of which there were 9 of us. And so the way he was ill affected me in the choices that I made. The choice to go technical and scientific was my way to stay away from his field. The brothers and sisters who were still interested in religion developed some sort of mental illness as well. So I stayed away from that.
In what sense do you think that your father was mentally ill?
He professed to be a Christian and used the word love a lot, but he had no ability to love anybody. I think he had a very large part in making my mother ill, and he sent her back to Japan. And pretty much that was it. He had no compassion or anything. It was a fixation of his, of what he should be doing as a Christian. So I have had a long time to. I've had to think that over, see where his head was, and make up my mind that being a Christian didn't mean you were crazy. And even my sisters and brothers who have some part of that in their life, I have to respect it because it provides a structure to their life that makes it okay to live, reasonably well. So my views of Christianity has evolved over the years to the one of sort of compassion and say, okay, you need it. But I don't go to church or anything.
So before you left for the Army, did you and your father get along, or was there tension, or was it a mutual respect?
We lived in the same house, but we didn't have much interaction. I tried to stay away from interacting with him as much as I could because it wouldn't end up well. But as he got older and he got past 100, he became more mellow. I mean, he didn't have the strength to be mean. So he was more mellow as he got older. And as a result, I didn't have to push back. And I could have some compassion toward him. But that was a big hurdle. And I have to be careful about how I treat people who have similar tendencies or beliefs and things, and say, okay, that might be good for them. It's not for me, but it's be okay for them. So I've sort of been able to get that monkey off my back.
When did he die?
He was 109. At 100, it would have been 1993. So I had 9 years of that. 2002? No. 1993, he would have been, he would have been 110. So 1992, he died. He was 109. My goal is to live to 110, to beat him. That's why I got my TAVR.
So 1992, you are 61. You have just married Diane and left Hughes. Was your father's death a tremendous event or not so
No.
much?
I don't know. When he died, I said, it's about time. And my brother, older brother, until he was dead, until he died, he keeps reminding me that that's what I told him.
And so when you refer to a type of forgiveness you may feel towards your father, this is something that happened after his death.
Yes. Well, I had less anger or animosity or whatever toward him toward the end of his life. Not the kind of anger that that consumed me and that essentially directed how I looked at life. But it certainly lessened as he got older. There's some members of my family, Brody might be one of them, I don't know, who don't have the same view of my father as I do. And so I did soften somewhat.
In what ways do you think you are like and different from your father?
Trying to think of how I was like him, and I can't think of anything. He certainly was obsessed with religion. And I have relegated religion to a very small or insignificant part of my life. Rather than religion, I tend to rely on science, technology, relationships with people. And as far as I can tell, he was wrapped up in religion to a unhealthy certainly unhealthy way, and he wouldn't convince anybody, as far as I can tell, to follow his ways.
So as a father yourself, do you think you made an effort to approach fatherhood differently than your father?
I certainly didn't make a conscious attempt one way or another. I don't know what kind of father I am. I tried to show interest in what my kids were doing, and tried to not judge. Hope that they have the smarts to do what they want to get out of life, what they want to get out of life. I don't think I have any I don't try to influence them in any way, but just to, if they ask, to let them know what I know. Dad is in a sort of a transitioning phase in his life right now, and I just hope he makes decisions that are good for him. I don't try to influence or anything. I don't think I can anyhow. He's certainly smart enough to make good choices.
We discussed earlier about how your mother, you last saw her when you were 10 and she was leaving to Japan on a ship.
I wasn't 10. I was probably 4 or 5.
And so essentially, or earlier you talked about you don't have memories of her or how she looks and sounds.
I have no memory of her at all, of any kind.
And you mentioned that you had an older sister when you were at the Assembly Center racetrack, and that she took care of you.
Yeah, that was Mary. She was 16 at the time. The reason I hang on to that is because she is one of my sisters who took a path that's closer to my father's and has made religion and, I guess, Christianity a big part of her life. And she has, as far as I can tell, used it like a cudgel or something to hound her kids. And as a result, her kids don't want to have anything to do with her, just like I wouldn't have anything to do with my father. And that's sort of painful for me because I have memories of her that are a lot different from her kids' memories of her. I want to tell them that she took care of me in a time of need. I haven't had the opportunity to do that yet. I will shortly. But I just want to give them a different view that I have of her that's softer than than their view of her. I know what they think of her because of the way I saw my father. And it's unfortunate, but I understand it, but I would like them to see another side of her. I saw her growing up and going to becoming a WAC during the wartime and wearing a uniform and becoming a nurse and letting that be her career for a whole lifetime. A good one, operating room nurse. And they don't see that, and I can understand that. I mean, there's lots of things that turn you off that don't let you see all of her, and so that's a shame.
Have you felt throughout your life that essentially growing up without a mother was something you had to deal with, or was it just the way it was, so to say?
Well, I remember in New Jersey, when we first moved to New Jersey from the camps, that I ran around with guys that had a mother. And it did occur to me that, boy, would it be nice to have a mother who prepared your meals and washed your clothes and stuff like that. Because I was the one that cooked meals and washed the clothes and cleaned the house and stuff like that. Now I was in the, like the 8th and 9th grade, and my brother and I did it together. And it was something you had to do, so you did it. And, but to see all these other guys that I ran around with that had mothers that did those things was, I could sense the difference. And thought it might be nice to have a mother. But now I have a wife. And she gets mad because I don't do as much as I should be doing. And I understand that. But I'm getting old, and she's going to get to the point where I think that I'm going to have to pick up some things. I'm hoping that my health will hold up so that I can take care of her when she becomes 90.
How has your experience been of getting old? Has it been particularly bothersome?
No, no. I'm a pretty healthy guy. Having a heart valve replacement was probably the most major health issue that I've had in my entire life. I had bladder cancer, but that was handled very well. It's funny that being a veteran, you realize all the things that the VA gives you. It was a lucky thing that I did do in 1951.
It paid off?
Paid off big time. Big time. Mostly my education. My education and my health.
So would you say that growing older, or growing old rather, has that produced any anxieties inside you?
Not really. The only thing that I'm concerned about is wanting to be old enough and to be aware when we accomplish controlled nuclear fusion to get all that cheap energy. That's what I'm looking forward to. And I keep reading about it.
The Koreans are making big progress.
Yeah, but I haven't heard about them lately. But I've been following what MIT's been doing since it's my alma mater. And they're doing pretty good, coming up with a small nuclear reactor that is a lot cheaper to build.
Tell me about physics and your technical work. Meaning, in what way has that field been important to you, and what do you enjoy about it?
Well, first of all, it grounded my whole career. I did a lot of mathematical modeling, lots. Building missiles and airplanes and things like that mathematically. And then after I retired, building mathematical models of automobile accidents. And did that for 10 years, so that was a good income too. Mm-hmm. But lately I have become sort of lazy, and that I haven't made the attempt to study something rigorously enough to actually build a mathematical model of something. But that's a little disturbing because that's what I did all my life. But I also forgive myself a little bit because I'm getting old.
Tell me about Grace. How did you meet her?
I met her when I worked for the Navy, and I had roommates, couple of them, and they were dating women, and me, I wasn't dating anybody. I did just, I don't know why. And they would bring the women over to our apartment, and that's why I met her. She was dating one of my other roommates. She looked interesting. She was intelligent and attractive woman. So I asked her out and went on from there. She was going to take some graduate courses at Indiana University, and I went down with her, and pretty much grew from there. I don't remember the early parts of our relationship so much. She had a room. She was living with a girl that she worked with, and the girl's father, and I would go over there and do what guys did when they visited friends. And
Was it long until you were married?
what was it? What?
Did you date very long, but before you were married?
Probably not very long. Only about a year, I think. I think we met at 89, and we got married at 90, something like that. December 1990, I think. So we got married, I think.
And how long were you married for?
Almost 30 years. She got cancer about the last 5 or 6 years we were married. And that's how she died, from cancer. Spread all over her body.
Were those happy years of the
With those
marriage?
what?
The 30 years of marriage. Were they happy years for you both?
Oh yeah, oh yeah. Yeah, that was a good time. I've had 2 good marriages.
Very lucky.
Yeah, they're both. This one is a little over 30 years now, and one with Grace was just about a year, under 30 years, or 9 months or something like that, but they're very close.
Did you have the two children early on, or what are the age gaps between?
Oh, there was 65 in 1965 and 1967, with the 2 years. We were married in 1960. We went to Purdue University for a year and a half or something, and then we went to MIT for a year, and then came back to Indianapolis, and that's when we had the babies. One baby and then another. 2 years apart.
Alan being the older one.
Yeah.
Older one. What was that like? Your first child, when it was born, was that as tremendous a moment for you as they say?
Not really, because in those days, the women didn't work. My wife didn't work. She took care of the baby and did everything else. Oh, I worked a walking distance from where we lived. Hardly needed a car. We had lots of friends whom I worked with. In fact, I still have the same friends back from 1960. 60? Yeah. In fact, we just came back from Santa Barbara, where we've had friends since 1958. And they've had 4 girls, and the 4 girls have had kids, and so their kids are practically my kids. So it's been a long succession of close friends.
What are some of the things you're most proud of in your career?
Well, I worked in the space program. I went to MIT and studied space flight, the instrumentation you needed to know where you were in space. I worked with guys that ended up being astronauts. I worked in the astronomy lab at MIT, and this other guy who ended up being an astronaut, he would drive me to work on his motorcycle. He was also a jet pilot. Those are fun things to think about. Another guy was a teaching assistant who went to the moon and back. And then another guy I worked with for several months at Hughes Aircraft on a classified project. And it was only after he went up in space and died in space that I found out that we were working on a project that he was supposed to test out in space. but didn't get a chance.
Do you know how he died?
Yeah, there was the capsule, space capsule, used O-rings to separate compartments and things like this. And a Caltech scientist won a Nobel Prize a few years back, 80 something, I can't remember his name now. He deduced that somehow this O-ring got frozen, and it leaked some gas and blew things up. So
this is the Challenger you're talking
yeah,
about.
the Challenger, yeah. My friend Greg, what's his last name? He and I worked together on this project that he was taking to space, but it was compartmentalized. It was top secret. I didn't even know it was top secret. All I knew it was compartmentalized. And so we couldn't talk to anybody about it, but he and I worked together on it. Then he went to space and he was dead.
That must have been terrible.
Yeah, I saw it. I went up to the roof house where I was working and watched the video and saw him die.
Are you happy with what you were able to do with Edo and Associates?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Until it got boring. The guys who were creating accidents weren't very imaginative, and mostly rear-end accidents, which are simple to reproduce and to claim some injuries. But we did a lot of testing. I sat in cars and got rear-ended, so that we knew how much impact. And I was, at the time, 62 years old. And so I knew what it took to injure somebody and what level of injury you got from certain impact strengths. And so it was easy to tell the jury what you know about it from your personal experience and the physics, and blow their story out of the sky. And then after that, after a while, that became boring, and so I quit. I'd have to do it. So, and I haven't done anything since. My brain is atrophied.
Tell me more about your time as a student in high school, college, and graduate school.
Well, in high school, my classes in physics and the tests and the questions that the teacher asked showed me that I had some sort of talent for it. Obvious things like what in the area of a bottle, and the answer was fairly easy, but he was looking. It was sort of like a quick trick question, because he wanted the pressure on the bottle, but he wanted us to take into account that at the entrance of the thing, there was no pressure on the bottle. And so everybody was answering it, and I raised my hand, and I gave him the right answer. And things like that sort of gave me some sort of feedback that I paid enough attention to detail that it caught my attention. And the same thing in grad school when I was at MIT. There are gimbals that help you to move things around, like a camera and things like this. And the instructor asked, how many gimbals do you need to be able to rotate anywhere you want to without any impediments? And so they got all kinds of answers. They were all wrong. This is grad school, MIT. So I raised my hand and I said, you need an infinite number of gimbals. Like I said, right, you're right, you know. And the answer was because gimbals can lock. And every time it locks, you lose a degree of freedom. So I said, and the people didn't understand gimbals that much, but I was working with gimbals enough to know that's what happened. And one question that Brody brought up was about a question about tops, how they spun, and that if you let them go, they'll run down and then they'll flip up. And they wanted us to explain it. Well, no one could explain it. I couldn't explain it.
Were you a good student?
I was a good student. What I understood in grad school was that I was good at linear algebra. That's essentially using matrices and things, and so I used that a lot in the problems that I had to solve when I went back to work. And I would get assignments from when I worked, while I was working. And my analysis was good enough or complex enough that the guy that gave me the assignment thought that the entire laboratory ought to see my analysis, so I would have to give a talk on that. And I did the same thing when I went to the government to explain something. Then my bosses told me that I should go to University of Maryland, what they call it, Advanced Physics Labs, APL, at University of Maryland, and gave a talk on fiber optics. And that I got the best paper award for that thing, and my bosses told me, I didn't know I got it, and they told me, later after I got back there, this is, you got a award for the best paper. So it's that kind of feedback makes you feel that you know what you're doing, that I know what I'm doing, you know. And that's really all you need to have confidence that you're doing something right. And it's the same thing with my master's thesis at MIT. I wrote a paper on how you can determine a ship's location at sea anywhere in the world by using satellites and inertial platforms. So I wrote all the equations, derived all the equations for determining a ship at sea based on locations of cameras at certain coordinates. And the ephemeris of a satellite as it's going by a star background. And all the mechanisms, mathematics behind what a camera does. And my major professor said, wow, that's a good job, you know. And he nominated me for a position in a research society. Those kinds of things gave me confidence that I could do, well, most anything that was asked of me to do. And then when I went to Hughes, they put me in charge of some pretty major projects, testing missiles and running a team of guys, software and hardware people. So I felt confident that I knew what I was doing. And I suppose that's it.
Did you experience any major failures or commit any very large mistakes in your career?
Yes. We had a missile that was supposed to hit a tank, a row of tanks, as it was coming out of an airplane. So pick a number as it's coming out of a pod. It says, okay, I'm going after tank number 5. And it sees this row of tanks, counts, sees number 5, and hits it. Well, it didn't hit it. So we had to find out what the problem was. It was a software problem. And so I had to get up in front of a whole hangar full of people, put out all the strips of signals that we had collected, and was able to trace out and point out exactly where the mistake was. And fix that. The next one went right down the tank.
Were you ever in trouble or admonished by superiors?
No, I don't remember If I did, I forgot.
I'd like to ask you about some stories I've heard about. I heard that you learned to drive in the military.
Yeah, I didn't. I was. How old was I? Oh, when I went in the military, it was 1951. So I was 20 years old. I had never driven. The first time I drove I was in a Jeep. I drove it was the smallest one, you know, and I had a second lieutenant behind me as my passenger. So I took him out to place and then took him to where he had to go, and there was these curb stops, you know, and I didn't stop soon enough. And I hit the curb like that, and he went. I had never driven before, and I was embarrassed about that. But then after there was a period of time when we had a motor pool of just hundreds of Jeeps, and we had to move these Jeeps from one part of this motor pool to the other. And so I must have driven 50 Jeeps. Okay, I had to drive maybe at least 50 Jeeps, I don't remember, and going back and forth, taking Jeeps to one area, walking back and picking up another Jeep and walking back. That essentially taught me how to drive a Jeep.
When you hit that curb, your passenger was a second lieutenant.
Second lieutenant.
Was that a much higher rank than you were at the time?
Oh God, I was a private. And he was a young second lieutenant.
I heard you have a story about driving in Paris with your wife, Diane.
Oh yeah, she was driving, and around the Arc de Triomphe, there's a circle. There's a driving circle, and this circle has got to be 12 or 15. What do you call them? Rows of cars, and they're going at pretty high speed. And we were coming in from way out of town now, from, I don't know, Spain or somewhere. I don't know where we were. And we could have been driving in from Austria or Yugoslavia. And she did at the time, she didn't pay much attention to her lane. And I still get nervous about that, but she's managed to not scrape the paint of the car. And we've had that car for 2 years.
The driving is hectic in Paris?
Yes, it is, especially around the Arc de Triomphe.
Speaking of Europe, I heard something interesting happened to you in Estonia.
Oh, yeah.
Speaking of Europe, I heard that something interesting happened in Estonia.
Yes. The story starts back in Seabrook. When we were let out of the camps to supply food for the soldiers, the U.S. government brought people from the South, black people. There was a contingent of people from Peru, Japanese, who the Peruvians did to us, or did to them what U.S. did to us, put them in camps. And after the war, they released those people and sent them up to the United States. And we had Japanese people looked just like us, but we couldn't understand them. They spoke Spanish, and we spoke English, and we couldn't understand each other. It was very, very strange. As well as we had Estonian people who were displaced by the Russians into camps, and so they were sent to the U.S. too because they were displaced. And so we had a mixture of people. And when Diane and I went through the Baltic countries and we ended up in Estonia, turns out there was a woman in our travel group who had a friend who was Estonian and who lived in South Jersey. I said, oh, South Jersey, that's where I lived. And so I says, yeah, I knew some Estonian people. I didn't know their names or anything, but I did know of them, and we mingled together somewhat. And so she had an Estonian friend in New Jersey, and here we were in Tallinn, Estonia, the capital of Estonia. And so she called up her friend in South Jersey, and her friend said, yeah, I know a Japanese guy who lived in Seabrook, where I grew up. And she was telling her friend over the phone, his name was, God damn it. I can't think of the name right now. But anyhow, she told her friend who was in our travel group. So this friend in the travel group told me that she knew a Japanese guy who lived in Seabrook. And I said, oh, who is that? So I said, she told me his last name. And I says, I only know one guy with that name, and his name is such and such. And he says, that's him. Which I thought was sort of funny. I didn't realize that similar things happened to those people in Estonia as happened to us and to the Peruvians in Peru. And I guess there's another story about the camps in which my father he was, I guess, very curious guy or something. And he went out to the desert and got what is called ironwood. That's a semi-petrified wood. And came back and made canes and things like that out of it. And I have a piece of it right over there. It's that I have from camp in the 40s. And he also, one other thing that he did that a whole bunch of people followed was he got a manzanita tree out in the desert and brought it in and dug it and put it the tree right in a camp. That was the only tree that was in the whole entire camp until he put that one in, and then other people started doing it. And then he dug underneath our barracks and dug a hole that was deep enough that he could put a desk and chairs in it, and it was cool enough because it was covered by the barrack. And he made an extra room for himself down there, and with stairs and things like that. And so other people saw that, and so the whole damn camp, I mean, very large camp, everybody started building cellars and bringing trees in, and wild animals like Gila monsters and stuff like that, and birds, making cages. So we converted that bare, stark place into sometimes beautiful places, artistic places, and brought in these buzzards and things like that. And he built things out of the ironwood, and I used to go out there with him and bring it in. But that's how we amused ourselves, I guess, during the 2.5 years that we were in the camps.
I understand at some point your father wanted to move a large rock.
Yes, but that was in New Jersey. He was in his 90s. We were all gone. I was probably in college or somewhere, and he saw this rock. He liked rocks. And so he started moving this rock with his car, dragging it, big rock. Then, couldn't drive it all, take it all at once. And then when he came back to move it some more, it was back where it was. And so he moved it, and that happened a couple of times. And finally, the guy who owned the property, he figured out what Pop was doing. So he picked up the rock and brought it over to Pop's place and put it down for him there. But Pop liked rocks a lot. So that's the rock story.
Do you listen to very much music?
Yes, I listen to lots of music on YouTube. Mostly, almost always jazz. For some reason, the music, where I listen to the music, there's a lot of Joey Alexander. And I liked him in the beginning, but I'm starting to get it's gotten to get a little old for me, and I like the older jazz musicians. Their music is more interesting, but his music is sometimes interesting. But Oscar Peterson is who I like a lot.
What do you like about jazz?
The improvisational quality and the skill it takes to especially piano playing, the skill it takes to do it, and it's got to be It's improvisational, so it's hardly thought out ahead of time. And the fact that it's right there, right now, coming from his head to the keyboard is what fascinates me.
We spoke earlier, and you said you like to watch all sorts of videos on YouTube.
Yeah. I like to watch videos on what it takes to to get nuclear fusion. It's these big ITER types machines are sort of fascinating, but what they're doing at MIT is what I'm interested in lately. So they're building a tokamak-like device that holds the plasma together and away from the walls. And it's a much smaller device, and it can be built in pieces. It doesn't have to be built all at once. And it seems like they are getting closer to being able to do it on a commercial basis. And I'm hoping that within the next 10 years, I'll be able to see it. I've been listening to talks by people from Princeton and from Bell Labs since the 50s. Talking about building these magnetic models to hold the plasma away from the solid interiors. And hasn't happened yet. I mean, it has happened only for very brief periods of time. But I'm hoping that I have this idea that there's a whole bunch of little suns all over the world.
What did you enjoy about golf?
Well, golf, that if you understand the golf swing and you perform it right, the ball's going to do what you want it to do. But it's very difficult to get the club face to do what it's supposed to do because the variability is very high, even with very, very small changes in the position of the club face. And so it takes quite a bit of skill just to get it sort of where you want it to be. And I played golf for a long time with a bunch of people for a long time. And it's fun because no one really gets very close to be a whole lot better than anybody else. And that's sort of fun that we're all working like our tails off. And we sort of get the same results.
I've heard it can be a frustrating game.
Yeah, except if you don't, if you're not, you don't expect too much from yourself except to keep it on the fairway. It can be fun.
I think we'll begin with our final set of questions here.
Okay.
What advice would you give to a 10-year-old David?
Trying to think of a subject that he would understand. I guess it would be having something to do with family dynamics. We had really, really poor family situation at home. My father was basically a fanatic, and essentially ruled with an iron hand. And I don't know what you can tell a 10-year-old in that situation how to ignore or to understand what was going on. We were I recall so little about my 10-year-old self, which even though it was wartime, essentially Pearl Harbor happened very close to my 10th birthday. I don't know that I could give him any kind of advice that would help him to get through it.
What advice would you give to 20-year-old David?
Probably to remind him that he had skills, demonstrable skills that was worth something. But I joined the Army because there was nothing else for me to do. I would have liked to have a wise advisor from school to guide me to make some decisions. Although joining the Army was a pretty good decision. It was pretty good. It still serves me well. I just had an operation that cost maybe $100,000 and didn't cost me anything because of that decision I made back in 1951. I've been very fortunate with the direction that my life went, and the promise that other people saw in me, that guided my life and gave me the skills to do what I've been doing.
Did 20-year-old David lack confidence?
Not really. Not in the technical areas. Like I said, I answered questions about a howitzer after one lecture that showed my superiors that I knew what I was talking about. And that knowledge that they had about me essentially set the course for my military life.
What advice would you give to 40-year-old David? 1971. It was a very busy time in your life.
Yeah, 71, I was, let's see, Alan was born in 65. Tad was born in 67. So he was 4 years old when I was 40. What advice would I give my 40-year-old? I don't know. I guess my life it's not very clear in my mind about what I was doing. In 1971. Just moving up to the San Fernando Valley. Ready to buy my second house.
Any advice for 70-year-old David?
My 70-year-old David? '31, 2001. 1931 plus 70. 2001, huh? Been retired for 9 years. 8 years. 8 years. In the middle of being an expert witness at trials. It was pretty good life.
People sometimes say that you regret the things you don't do more than the things you do. What do you think about that?
I'm trying to think of something that I've been wanting to do that I haven't done. Yeah, I suppose playing a musical instrument at early enough age so that I became interested in in pursuing it as an amusement and just to become skilled at something other than what my career was. Because right now, I don't think I have any skills. And all I can think of is the skills I used to have. And yeah, I do wish that I had a skill that I could be proud of. And a musical instrument would probably be something that I would enjoy. I suppose primarily would be a jazz guitar. That's what I think that I would enjoy doing.
It's a wonderful instrument.
Yeah.
If you could have it such that everyone in the world does something of your choosing each day, say read a book, exercise an hour, etc., what would you have people do?
Eat healthy and exercise daily. I do that. And it pays off big time.
Clearly,
Yes.
you are good evidence for that.
I don't know. I hope so.
91, you look great. What is some good advice that you have received?
Well, I've been in psychotherapy most of my life, continuous. And not everybody can afford it. But I've managed to do that. So my wife and I, we go to marriage counseling every other week. And it has made our marriage stronger over the years, not just up and down, but really stronger over the years, so that there's a measurable difference in the way we look at each other on a daily basis. And that's priceless.
What is some advice that you would give to whoever may be watching this, whether it be family or not?
Well, the advice I would give is something that I'm not really good at yet, and that is having warm interpersonal relationships with those close to me. Like with Brody, and my son. Those are the things that make my relationships rich and natural, healthy, having good relationships with those close to you is pretty important.
Would you have any advice for a couple about to get married?
I guess it's look out for each other's feelings. Be aware of what they're feeling and see what you can do to make it better if it's not, or make it healthy if it's not. Yeah, to make your relationships with people close to you good as you can make it.
Is there anything else you'd like to say or discuss with us today?
At the moment, I don't have anything else. I may come up with something later, but at the moment, I think I've talked myself out.
We'll have to come back when you're 100.
Yes, yes. 100 and 110. I fully expect to live to 110.
I don't think you'll surprise anyone.
That's what the doctors told me when when I asked them, I'm wanting 20 more years. And he looked at me and he says, no problem.
Well, David Edo, it's been a pleasure chatting with you.
Pleasure chatting with you and making me stretch my mind and to review in a little bit more detail about my life.
Thank you.